Minister, thank you for taking this topical issue. Thousands of people lined the streets in Mayo and Donegal last weekend because of the sense of unfairness and unjust treatment that they have been getting under this scheme. All they want, Minister, is equity and fairness. Equity in that 90% is not sufficient to cover the cost. The big problem is that people who can least afford it are locked out of this scheme as they are at the moment. There's also no provision has been made for families who have to move out, which is most of them, to have for their rent while they've moved out. Funding hasn't been allowed for the energy savings as it is at the moment. That really can be fixed. It needs to be looked at. The windows and doors need to be included. And to add insult to injury, all of these families are forced to pay property tax. Minister, you need to review this scheme.
I've got last and appreciate you giving discretion to the deputies to make their own contributions, given that 5 deputies brought this issue forward. It is a hugely important issue, and I know that Minister O'Brien is committed to meeting residents in Mayo and has met with families in Donegal as well. The cracking of external walls of dwellings in Donegal and Mayo due to crumbling of concrete blockwork came to light in 2013, and an expert panel was established in 2016 to investigate the matter. The panel, chaired by Dennis McCarthy, formerly of Waterford County Council, and representatives from the NSAI, Association of Consulting Engineers of Ireland, and the Institute of Geologists of Ireland, compiled their report, which was published in 2017. It concluded that the disintegration of concrete blocks used in the construction of affected dwellings in Donegal and Mayo was primarily due to excessive amounts of deleterious materials in the aggregate used to manufacture the concrete blocks. The deleterious material in Donegal was primarily muscovite mica, and in Mayo was primarily reactive pyrite. The National Standards Authority of Ireland published a standardised protocol in November 2018, IS 465-2018, for the assessment, testing and categorisation of damaged buildings incorporating concrete blocks containing certain deleterious materials. Rigorous analysis is therefore being carried out in relation to the circumstances that led to the defective concrete block issue. An existing scheme was informed by the work of the expert panel and finalised in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General and the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. The process also took account of the comprehensive engagement that took place between our department and both Donegal and Mayo County Councils and operate and administer that scheme. The grant limits agreed on foot of this engagement ensures that a scheme can be budgeted for with the potential financial liability known at all times, and also to ensure that the available budget can benefit the majority of properties and the maximum number of people, mindful that the scheme is being funded from the Exchequer and the scope cannot be open-ended. Funding of £20 million has been provided to administer the scheme in 2021. The scheme will be demand-led, and the level of funding may vary between the 2 local authorities. And I'm just referring to the 2 local authorities here. The grant scheme targets a restricted group of homeowners who have no practical options to access redress, and it is not a compensation scheme. It is provided in order to remediate the issues of the defective blocks or return the building to a condition it would have been in if it hadn't been affected by the use of deleterious materials in the blockwork, namely mica and pyrite. The level of funding available is subject to the maximum limits depending on remedial option recommended in the engineer's report, or 90% of the eligible costs, whichever is the lesser. The maximum grants payable from $247,500 for option 1 to $49,500 for option 5. I'm taking on board and acknowledging the points raised about additional costs to homeowners. The decision to go with a grant scheme as opposed to a type of scheme provided by the Pyrite Remediation Board was intended to give homeowners the flexibility to manage their own projects and allow them to deal directly with the appointed contractor. Initially, the grant was proposed to be 80-20, but following further consideration and political representation, it was changed to 90-10. The Department, is formulating the scheme, concluded that the contribution of 10% from affected owners was appropriate to control costs, incentivise the use of appropriate remediation options, and to promote the reuse of materials where feasible. This also is in line with how similar government grant schemes operate or have operated in the past. The applicant contributed to the cost is a key requirement. The programme for government sets out a number of commitments in respect of the important policy area of building defects and provides an examination of defects in housing, having regard to the recommendations of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Housing Safe as Houses report. In this regard, my Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage has been actively engaging with key stakeholders, and the Minister has had several meetings with stakeholder representative groups on this matter.
Thank you, Minister.
The Minister appointed Seamus Neely, former Chief Executive of Donegal County Council, to the position of Chair of the Independent Working Group, and the Chair will oversee the effective implementation of the Group's terms of reference.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Laska Hirlock. Minister, it's very clear, cross-party, this scheme is not fit for purpose as it is. Mayo and Donegal will not stand for being treated differently than people in the other part of the country. We need a review. We need an immediate review. Minister, I have seen people get sick. I have seen people absolutely brought to their knees by looking at what has happened to their houses through no fault of their own. They have been left hung out to dry. Minister, please come in and do something in this. This scheme has to be reviewed. I believe it can be corrected, and I think it needs to be corrected sooner rather than later so that people and families can get on with their lives. Thank you.
And again, thanks for giving the deputies the opportunity to have their say on this, and it is coming cross-party and coming across loud and clear. Certainly, I think the comparisons in relation to the pyrite scheme, the average cost of this will be double of that of the average cost of the pyrite scheme, of the average cost per intervention here. But with regard to the scheme, the aim of the scheme is to help insofar as possible to reinstate the average size dwelling to the condition that it would have been in the original blockwork had it not been affected by pyrite and mica. Mindful that the scheme is being funded from the Exchequer, the scope cannot be open-ended, and the funding is available must be used prudently to achieve the most efficient and cost-effective outcomes. But regarding the issue in relation to those initial engineering costs, it may be possible for applicants and an appointed engineer to come to an arrangement where an engineer is willing to wait for the local authority to pay out for the grant funding in respect of the work. That's just one option. But our department officials and Minister O'Brien are working closely. I spoke to Deputy Cleary earlier this evening as well in relation to Mayo, and I think the Minister has committed to going there to meet, and he has also met with residents in Donegal. I would also like to emphasise that the Department is engaging with the SAI to explore synergies between the existing grant schemes and the defective concrete block scheme, and it is our aim to ensure that eligible applicants can access these grants while remediation works are underway. I believe that the scheme is fair and equitable, and it will work for the vast majority of homeowners with the 5 remediation options available to those support affected. It must be acknowledged that the scheme is available to those with no other practical means to return the dwelling to a condition that would otherwise have been in had it not been affected by the conditions of the blockwork, namely mica or pyrite. But I am taking on board and will take back the concerns that have been raised by the deputies and acknowledge the suffering and hurt that is causing so many people in Mayo and Donegal.
Thank you.